Bruce Lee was a philosopher, a trailblazer, a genius, and a truly charismatic teacher, public speaker, and actor. He had a chip on his shoulder. When he came into this world, his parents, steeped in concepts of Chinese magic, were very, very fearful because they believed that there was a curse on the firstborn males in the family. So he was born Li Junfan, and his parents would address him as a little girl and make him wear a dress in hopes that they could trick the spirits into thinking that he was a little girl and not a little boy. I suspect that this gave him something of an inferiority complex that then needed to be compensated for later in life with aggression. This fits in perfectly with the Adlerian model of inferiority, having felt dominated by an external force. Later, our will to power, as identified by Nietzsche, drives us to take revenge on that dominating force and to redominate that which we felt dominated us. So Bruce had a chip on his shoulder, and that's what pushed him to be as great as he was. He was driven obsessively to be as great as he was by this chip on his shoulder. The chip was not improved when the family moved from Hong Kong to San Francisco, and he experienced the exclusionary, race-based attitudes that white America had towards Asians in that time period. When he was actually coming up and seeking to be an actor, a lot of resistance was thrown his way simply because he was told American audiences would never want to see a Chinese face on screen, never. And Bruce did not want to take that no for an answer. He wanted to prove them wrong. Not only did he want to prove them wrong, he wanted to become the most famous Asian American star in the world, the most famous face that anybody had ever seen. And somewhere along the way, I think between Chinese mysticism, Chinese magic, and plain old magic of human unconscious psychology, he made a few errors. When he said that he wanted to be the most famous and recognized Chinese American star who ever lived, this was a deal he made with himself, and he made it with sincerity, he made it with emotion, and he made it with a great deal of intent over and over again. Not realizing that he was setting the cogs in motion, the cogs of fate in motion that would ultimately lead to his untimely death. Because when he did pass away tragically at age 33, it was that fact, not the cinematic success, but the fact that he had died so young, that shot him to fame. People have suggested that Bruce Lee, the character of Bruce Lee, the face of Bruce Lee, at one time was the most famous and most recognizable face and character in the whole world. You could go anywhere in the world. You could show them pictures of the President of America, of the Queen of England, and they wouldn't have a clue who was being shown to them, but they would all recognize Bruce because they would have seen these movies. They would have seen them no matter where in the world you went. The most undeveloped countries in the world, into the villages, they would all recognize Bruce. Where they wouldn't recognize the President of the United States of America or the Queen of England, they'd recognize him. So he fulfilled his intent, but he forgot to write a clause in the spell that he made of his career and of his life, that he would like to be famous and respected, but also live to enjoy the fame and the respect and to watch his children grow up. I suspect that Bruce knew plenty about magic. He certainly had studied both Chinese and Western philosophy. He had a degree in philosophy, and he had studied psychology as well.
This is Enter the Dragon, the first martial arts film produced by a major Hollywood studio.
When we look at Enter the Dragon, from the point of view of the title and the seminal themes in this film, I think Enter the Dragon was really him trying to enter and put placement to a Chinese American star himself, the Dragon, as he was known. That was his nickname, was Sulam, the little dragon, in Cantonese. So he was the dragon that was entering. How did he do that? Well, in the end, he made a Chinese-American film. It was done with Chinese money and made by the Shaw Brothers studio in Hong Kong, with an American director and with American actors, white and black and Chinese himself. The main baddie was to be Chinese. The person who invites him to the tournament is British. I think what he's trying to do here is to establish that the world is made up of many races and many nationalities, and they all have power. So there's a kind of a desire to equalize the playing field, and this is in resistance to the American cinematic environment and probably the Chinese cinematic environment. I'm sure the Hong Kong didn't want to put a white face as a hero of a Chinese movie at that time either. So this, I feel like this is Bruce making a point. The most interesting thing to me though, apart from the title Enter the Dragon and the casting choices within the film, where it shows some white people are good, some are bad. Some Chinese people are good, some are bad. So on and so forth. It's an effort towards to sort of equalize the playing field a little bit and to break these ethnic stereotypes. The real barrier breaking moment though comes at the end of the film, when Bruce is walking through a hall of mirrors and he has to, in order to defeat his enemy and take vengeance and break the boundaries of this magical dimension in which he's entrapped and being predated upon, he actually breaks those mirrors. Breaking mirrors is a taboo in Western culture for magical reasons that go back to Western magical practice. But it is also in Chinese culture for slightly different reasons. But in feng shui, the way of understanding the flow of energy in your life and in your home and in a country, you don't break mirrors. Mirrors are powerful, magical totems in Chinese mysticism, and he broke them. Why? I think the hall of mirrors that he must pass through represents the distorted way in which people saw him. They never really saw him. They only ever saw avatars of him in their schizophrenic, fractured, projected reflections of the mirror, because they couldn't not see him as a Chinese man. There's an interview in which he's asked something like, how do you view yourself as a Chinese action star? And he replies, a little bit testily, I'd rather view myself as a human being. Which is a perfectly reasonable response. But that was his frustration. And so he wanted to break the mold. He wanted to break the boundaries. And he succeeded. The film could be said overall to be a magical spell in and of itself. It was a great work. It took sacrifice. It took discipline. It took time and a manifestation of intent. Indeed, it's a film which predicts the future. If you watch the first fight scene of that film, he predicted the clothing and even the moves that have not really been in common usage of the MMA scene that would have fired off some 25 years after that film was finished. He was a real visionary. The film also functioned as a spell in that it did project him into the public consciousness. It worked. He did break free of that mold. We did see Bruce as a Chinese hero, but as a Chinese American hero. And he was not in any way conforming to any stereotypes of Asian males. He wasn't passive. He wasn't nerdy. He didn't win through intellect. He is as savage, as muscular, and as full of rage as any of the white action heroes at the time. And even though he is a skilled martial artist, there are scenes in the film where, there's one scene in the film where he kills somebody by stamping on their brains. So Bruce is really giving us a strong message here. He can compete, he can keep up with the best of them. And he won. He actually won that round. He won the battle, but he didn't win the war because he didn't set the spell right. He didn't say, I'd like to live long enough to enjoy my success. And I think that's the reason why Bruce died so young.